Do not let that win over Clemson be a one-off. Please, Miami, I'm begging you. Do not overlook Virginia.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday Eve. I am Alex Donno, your host, University of Miami alumnus, longtime South Florida sports radio vet, and contributor to allhurricanes.com. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen. We are available free wherever you get your podcasts and available free on YouTube. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. So we're going to talk about this matchup with Virginia, and we're going to talk about some of the young players on Miami that have absolutely been standing out and stepping up in recent weeks. And that's why we bring in our boy Blue, Larry Blustein, been covering high school, college, and pro sports for a very, very long time and does it at a high level. 560 WQAM in South Florida. Our boy Blue, how are you?
Good. Thanks, Alex. Appreciate it. Long week, which obviously is going to culminate on Saturday with Miami and Virginia. And a day game for, thank goodness.
I needed one of those day games.
Oh,
They keeping me up because I do post game. They keep me up till like 2 a.m. every week lately.
Crazy.
Yeah, and the next one will be a night game, North Carolina State. But same way, I don't want Miami to look ahead. We're not going to look ahead either. And Blue, the reason why, on paper, Miami is absolutely a better team than Virginia. Yeah. And it's interesting because there's two ways to look at the Virginia Cavaliers. Look, you can look at their entire body of work at 2-5. You can look at their statistics, which on the season are not good. They're in the 80s, 90s, or 100s in most statistical categories. Right. However, as we all know, they just beat North Carolina on the road last week, a week after Miami couldn't do that very thing. They have won their past two games, William and Mary, and then Virginia. And even if you look at some of Virginia's losses, okay, 3 of their losses were decided by 3 points or less. So they've hung in there in a lot of their games, Blue, and their quarterback, Tony Muskett, he's been making, and Muskett, by the way, great quarterback name. He's been making some plays. They've got a running back who scored 3 touchdowns last week, a receiver who had over 100 yards last week. This is not a team to overlook.
Yeah, no doubt. Muskett took over for Anthony Calandria, a freshman from St. Petersburg, Lakewood, who actually started the season out as the number 1 quarterback. Tony Elliott's a really good coach. I mean, let's face it. I mean, he's been, Clemson. He's been around winning programs for a long, long time. And I think that, when you think about Virginia, obviously, and I always equate South Florida, obviously, as one of the best areas in the country for high school football. Well, that Hampton Roads area that produced Allen Iverson and the Vick brothers and Ronald Curry and on is comparable. And certainly they're starting to tap into it. Obviously, they're a little bit different academically than most schools. They're like Miami, where you just can't get in. You have to have, your grades have to be, up to par as well. But, it just shows you about the ACC, because just when everybody's sitting there and looking at the schedule ahead and with North Carolina State and Louisville, and then you look at Boston College, who beat the same Georgia Tech team that Miami had a tough time with, took Florida State right into late in the fourth quarter. So there is nothing that signals that any week is going to be an easy week. And that's a good thing, because that Mario Cristobal's of that belief that you cannot, especially you're coming off a 5-7 team, you're fighting for your bowl life. You can't take anybody lightly. And certainly they're going to take Virginia on Saturday is hard as they did Clemson and Texas A&M, believe me.
We talked last week before Miami's win over Clemson about keys to the game. I really, Blue, obviously I could go deeper if I wanted to, but I really have 2 keys for this game. Number 1, same key that we had last week, avoid the self-sabotage. Miami did that against Clemson, and they won the game. Hurricanes
Yeah.
only turned the football over once, and it was an interception that was kind of like a punt. Like, it didn't end up being a costly turnover. Not every turnover is created equal. So the Hurricanes, they took care of the football last week. They kept the penalties relatively down. So avoid the self-sabotage this week, because that's really, to me, that's the only way you can lose to a team like Virginia, is if you shoot yourselves in the foot. And then if Miami can control the line of scrimmage on both sides, the way that they've done most of the season, they can win this game. A couple stats for you, Blue. This game can be won with Miami's running game and stopping Virginia's running game. You saw what Miami did against a great Clemson defense last week, 211 rushing yards. Virginia, they're 103rd in the country against the run. They give up 172 yards per game. Now, when Miami faced Georgia Tech's defense, they were also really bad against the run, and Miami still didn't win that game. But then on the flip side, Virginia only averages 2.7 yards per carry. So you think about the way Miami kept Clemson's running game in check last week with really good backs in Shipley and Maffa. The Hurricanes should be able to make Virginia one-dimensional and have to beat them through the air.
Well, it's funny because there's a sort of thing in football, and probably every sport, but mainly football, is matchups. And some teams match up better. I mean, you look at last week, North Carolina didn't really run the ball well against Virginia, but they owned Miami the week before. And that's what they kind of gashed them, for some big runs and damaging runs. So it's all about matchups. I think Miami matches up favorably with Virginia because of the fact that you have a quarterback who has one game under his belt, and I'm sure he's going to be in there again. But here's a guy in Emory Williams who, looked kind of like a first-year quarterback in the first half. But then as things got a little bit easier for him, they ran the ball. And that's, like you said, that's essential. Because any quarterback, even Tyler Van Dyke, you need to add balance. And if you don't add balance, and I see it all the time in the high school level, teams will sense that you can't run the ball and they'll force you to pass. And that means they'll a lot of times they'll put you back on your heels. And that's the one thing Miami's been really fortunate. They're getting great linebacker play this year. And I think their front seven right now potentially is as good as any. Like I said, with Mawanoa, and my guy Corey Flagg, who everybody wants to keep pushing off to the side. Yeah. But he's led Miami in tackles the last 2 years. Every time he gets in there, he makes plays. And you know what? If he doesn't start, that's fine. He's in by the fifth play anyway. So and he's making plays. And then you got your secondary, which is still a work in progress. Yeah. People take a chance to go, deep on Miami a lot, but the whole thing is predicated on the front seven not giving that quarterback enough time to go deeper or to, spot people 25 and 40 yards up the field.
Blue mentioned Kiko Mawanoa. We sang his praises on the show yesterday, but I didn't have this stat yet when I did the show yesterday. He is the top graded run stopper of any linebacker in the country right now, grading out at 90.8 on Pro Football Focus. Top run stopping linebacker. He's been incredible. I want to talk about the quarterbacks when we come back. Blue brought up Emory Williams. I always give Larry Blustein credit because he was one of probably the first person last year while he was being recruited to tell me, look out for this Emory Williams. This guy's going to be a star at Miami. A year and a half ago, I think, is when Blue put Emory on my radar. And we also need to talk about the sensation, the guy taking Miami by storm, pun intended, Rueben Hurricane Bain. We have so much. We're only getting started here. Keep it locked right here. Larry Blustein with us on a new episode of Locked On Canes. Guys, we are proudly brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the largest independently owned daily fantasy sports platform in North America. They're the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS because it's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you bet more or less on 2 to 6 players, stat projections, and you watch the winnings roll in. It's just you versus the numbers. Guys, it is the most fun I've had, winning up to 25 times my money this football season. You can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. It takes less than 60 seconds to make your entries. And guys, we have to talk about the Prize Picks reboot policy. Your entries stay in play, even if one of your players gets injured. For NFL games and college football top 25 matchups, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and doesn't return in the second, that player is rebooted. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with injury insurance. So what are you waiting for? Try it today. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege with promo code LockedOnCollege at Prize Picks. We are also proudly brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available, and that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. You add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen today. For the everydayers, we love you. Larry Blustein is with us. He's a favorite of the everydayers. And Blue, now, Mario Cristobal gave indications that Tyler Van Dyke is probably back this week. You know, obviously, we'll wait till Saturday. We'll wait till the warm-ups on Saturday because, you know, last week there was an expectation that Van Dyke would play. But it's nice to know that if Van Dyke isn't good to go yet, Emory Williams can help this team win football games because that's what he did last week. What did you see from Emory, Blue, and how did that compare to what you saw from him at Milton High School?
Well, obviously, you know, he's matured quite a bit in the last year plus. He's been around the system now for a bit. And, you know, like I said, you know, first half last week, a little timid, wasn't getting a lot of help. Offensive line kind of broke down a few times, didn't give him, you know, a clear view. But then as the second half began and Miami started running the ball, and that was the key. You know, they were, you know, we all thought that, as you said before, that Clemson would be the team that would run the ball for, you know, 200 yards. And it seemed like Miami kind of took their lead. And, you know, and that's what made it easy for Emory. Then he started spotting guys, had a little bit more time, got confidence on the sideline from the coaches. And, you know, obviously I'm sure that Tyler was in on that too, because when you're on the sideline, you become another coach because you're fresh in the mind. And that's the one thing about a Tyler Van Dyke. And there's a lot of players like this nationally now that when they're on the bench or they're injured, they'll praise the other quarterback. And he did. He said that Emory has such a high ceiling because of the fact that he's physical, he's 6'4", throws the ball around. He just has to have experience in reading defenses. And you know what? Very few guys will come in a situation where, you know, you have a building program and be able to dominate. You know, usually when you have the Bryce Youngs and players like that, because they're coming in a situation where they have like 10 NFL drafts around them. So, yeah, I just think that he did a real good job, you know, and I got to give all the credit in the world to former University of Miami Hurricane Ty Wise, who kind of kept me updated, you know, because he lives up that way. He watches him. And he knew, you know, the first time he wasn't so sold on him, but then he saw him a year later and he said he matured and he's going to be very good. And he was happy. And I think he went over and talked to him and, you know, congratulated him. And speaking about Ty Wise, we got to keep his kid on the radar at 6'5", 300-pound sophomore. And wow.
I love it. Now, just watching Emory going back to spring, and even like, you know, I didn't watch him in person in high school, but I watched some of his tape and all that. You know, he does remind me a little bit of Ken Dorsey. I think he has that sort of stature and that sort of potential. Is there any other comparison you might be able to think of? And I'll also ask you, what do you think Emory Williams' ceiling is? Because Hurricanes fans, we got a glimpse of him, and especially in that fourth quarter, people are starting to think, hey, this could be QB1 a year or two down the road, if not even sooner. I mean, well, a year down the road.
Well, obviously you made I think that's a good comparison with Ken Dorsey because, a lot of the other Hurricane quarterbacks we've had were a little bit shorter, maybe more mobile. So, especially of late, you look back at Ryan Collins and quarterbacks like that who also beat you with their legs, the young man that you have as your sidekick on the post game show, he's another one, Rozier, who is a more run pass type of guy. So he is more like Ken Dorsey. He's not going to crush you with his speed, but he's got that size and he's got innate ability to find guys, and his ceiling is just amazing. And then I think when you hear people. And again, I try to give people credit where credit's due, and got to give Frank Ponce, the offensive coordinator at Appalachian State, a lot of credit for this because he's the one that went up there and said, you know what, he sold at the time, he didn't really have an offensive coordinator, to kind of sell him on at the time because they were kind of in flux. So he told Mario, I'll vouch for him because I think the kid's going to be really special. He's an intelligent kid. He's physically gifted, throws the ball all the way around. And then he's a kid who gets it, and not everybody gets it in this, in this society anymore. And I think he's going to be really special. And, and that's the thing. Miami's recruited a lot of really good quarterbacks. They're after a couple of others. And like I still said, it wouldn't surprise me if they went into the portal next year and maybe got a junior or a senior, a guy's in his last year, just to be there for a safety net or even to kind of ease these guys in further because, everybody does it. You want to build a program and you have to be deep. But, I think Emory's going to be fine. He's going to be one of those guys, like you said. He's a winner. He's an intense guy. And as he picks up things, he's going to be a lot more familiar and a lot more comfortable with the offense.
Emory did a good job spreading the football around, and I thought Shannon Dawson called a heck of a game. He told Mario Cristobal afterwards that was the toughest or one of the the toughest games he's had to call in terms of play calling. But also, I kind of wonder if maybe a little bit more balance even when Tyler Van Dyke does play. You think maybe sometimes Dawson kind of gets enamored with Tyler Van Dyke's verticality and his arm, and maybe Miami should emphasize the run a little bit more the way that they did against Virginia.
Well, I think what happened...
against Clemson this week against Virginia, I should say.
Right. I think what happens, Alex, is you get used to things working, and that's why I know it's weird that the fans have a criticism of him locking into Xavier Restrepo, but when Xavier has more catches than basically anybody in the ACC and he's advancing the ball, you can't be angry with it. He feels comfortable with him, but I think now maybe a week away and have an opportunity maybe to take a step back to see, hey, well, wait a minute. I think we could do this. We could use Brashard Smith, who's coming into his own. Obviously, a guy who's a game changer, where Xavier is more of a possession guy. He'll get you 10 to 15, maybe 20 inside the 30-yard line. Brashard could take it the distance at any time. So he's going to be able to use that. His running game is paramount. And once that running game goes, and you look back at the games this year where Miami's run for well over 150, 160 yards, they beat the opposition because then it opens things up. And you'll see like a Kobe Young or a Jacoby wide open somewhere down the line. The only disappointment that I feel so far is they're not using tight ends. And that was a selling point of Shannon Dawson coming from Houston, that he targeted his tight ends quite a bit. And I think one of the tight ends had 78 catches or 80 catches. And, you have a kid like Arroyo who, all we did was when he was, the understudy to Will Mallory, all we did was, oh, wow, he's going to be able to come in. And I know he's been hurt, but he's healthy now. And I think the game plan, coming this week should be including your tight ends a little bit more because as well as I do, when you clear out, you send Restrepo as a slot, and then then you have Kobe on the outside or Jacoby on the other side, and then they go, and everything's filtered towards the out, towards the sidelines. You got the middle wide open, and more likely than not, your tight end's gonna be paired on a linebacker or a safety who may not have the speed, may be able to hit you, but he won't have the speed or the athleticism to stay with him. So I think that Dawson needs to kind of, and I'm not, I'm not an offensive coordinator. I may play one on TV, but I mean, I'm not I'm not that the type of guy who's going to tell you, but it's just obvious. You watch the games week in and week out, and you have to have an opinion, whether it's valid or not. And that's the one thing that I watched Miami, last week, sitting there and watching them in the game. And I'm thinking, you know what, they got to do this or they got to do that. And yeah, I think you're going to see more of them open up the playbook to include the tight ends, because they got some good ones. And over the next couple of years, if you want to continue to recruit high level tight ends, you got to use them. Exactly. That's how Iowa, turns out 2 NFL tight ends every year, because they predicate their offense on using those tight ends. Yeah, to block, but also to catch the ball.
Oh, those are some great points. And I can tell you're going to get a lot of thumbs up. So, guys, please hit that like button if you like what Larry Blustein said about using the tight ends more. And we're not done, because we got to talk about the ceiling for one Rueben Hurricane Bain. When we come back, Larry Blustein is with us. You want to keep it locked right here to Locked On Canes. I'm having so much fun this football season on FanDuel. You can snap into action the NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. So if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, you hear about it, you hear us talk about it every week, you haven't done it yet, there's no better time than right now to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and so much more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen today. And guys, it's almost Friday. Tomorrow, 11 a.m. to noon, live, college football kickoff live here on the Locked On Network. I co-host that show with Drake Toll and Kenton Gibbs. We take you across the college slate, all the big games, all the big storylines, 11 a.m. till noon, streaming right here on this YouTube channel and every Locked On College YouTube channel. And folks, for the everydayers, you want to take that everydayer experience to the next level, join our exclusive SMS texting service, the Locked On Canes Insiders. I give you guys recruiting updates, breaking news, scoops, one-on-one questions and answers on there. Get text directly from my phone to yours. Click the link in the show description below to try Locked On Canes Insiders, 2 weeks free. And then if you like it, you can opt in for $4.99 a month. We give you a lot of added value on there. Rueben Bain is adding a lot of value to Miami's defense. Blue, he led the nation in quarterback pressures last week with 10. 2 sacks, forced fumble, 2 TFL. I mean, the guy's, I think he just turned 19. He's 19 years old, and he's an absolute menace. How much better can he get?
Yeah, well, obviously he's going to gain more experience, and he's going to, he's one of those guys. And I know that, a lot of people want to kind of compare him. He's Warren Sapp is what he really is, size-wise. I remember talking to the coaches when Warren was at Miami, and they had to take him out of the practices because he disrupted it so much. And I think that's what Rueben Bain's headed to. He's not the tallest guy, and that you look back at Warren Sapp, and he was never really that tall either, but he was strong. He was a smart type of player. And I think that's what Rueben is. He's today's version of Warren Sapp, which is not so bad. He is a Hall of Famer, first round draft pick.
I'll take it.
Yeah, I'll take it too. And, but if people always say, who can you compare him to? Well, if he played on the outside, I would say more like Aaron Donald. If he played a little bit more, he's playing more of the interior right now. It's because Miami really, and you and I talked about this, back when they got Leonard Taylor, and I said, yeah, that's great. But every program, Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, has 2 and 3 of those type of guys. Right. And that's where Miami's striving for. So now you have Leonard Taylor, but you also have Rueben Bain, Gerald Bain. I have Gerald Bain on my mind. But you also have them. They're 2 dominating type of players. I think Ruben's one of those guys that everybody knew He's one of those guys that would usually end up at Ohio State or usually end up at Georgia. And that's where this program's coming to, where you're getting guys who are high-level guys that Miami used to get back in the 80s and the early 90s, where you say, okay, you never thought twice about it. But I think because of the way things are, you get a guy like that in there, athletic, smart, team player. He wanted to come here all the way, and he wanted to be a Hurricane. And certainly got to get used to seeing him for a couple of years, because I think he'll go after 3, and he should, because he's going to be a first-round draft pick.
Yeah, another player I wanted to ask you about. I don't think we're not going to see him this week, but we should see him, or could see him, before the season ends. And that's Trevonte Citizen at running back, because Mario Cristobal said it on Monday. He's getting closer. He's starting to do team drills in practice, not just individual stuff. They've been very careful with him because he had a really, really serious knee injury last year. So I respect the caution, but at some point, Blue, this year, I think we're going to see Trevonte. And, we don't talk about him much because he's never played for Miami. But I go back to last year, looking at him at fall camp as a true freshman coming in. I looked at this guy and I said, he looks like an NFL back. Like he's got that sort of size and body, and what he did in high school seems to back that up. What do you think Trevonte Citizen can provide if we do see him this season?
I saw him last week on the sideline, and I'm thinking to myself, wow, he's in good shape. I mean, and that's the thing, when you get injured sometimes, when you come back, you're a better version because you worked hard to get back. You were really upset that you weren't playing. And I'll tell you what, I think people are going to see by next year, he's going to be the dude. Mark Fletcher, you got 2 guys, potentially NFL type of running backs. And like I've said, Miami's done a good job running the ball. And you look at somebody, like anybody on the team that's trying to help out. Last week they got thin at the running back position, and everybody, 5 weeks ago, they got too many running backs. But the kids like Chaney, who I liken to Javaris James, a guy who, was a real, hard runner, didn't have the marquee, name, but he got into the NFL and did a really, really good job. And I think that's going to be, Chaney. Chaney's going to be like that because he runs the ball extremely hard, and he's fast and he's athletic. So you've got guys like that. And I definitely think Citizen is the future of this program. He and Fletcher definitely could be a 1-2 punch over the next couple of years that a lot of teams around the country wouldn't be able to match.
Yeah, no, that's very well said. By the way, you guys can hear Larry Blustein tonight. I've said it before. I'll say it again. His radio show on 560 WQAM. If you're a high school sports fan and a college sports fan, this is the most informative show you are going to find. And he's on tonight, Thursday night. Blue, what time and what can we expect?
6 to 8. Be a good show. We're going to talk. We talk everybody. We talk Florida State. We talk, obviously, Adam Lichtenstein from the Sun Sentinel. South Florida Sun Sentinel is going to be on with us every week. You'll be coming up again. I know your schedule is kind of busy. It's not easy to get you, but
you just let me know. I'll have my people call your people.
No doubt. Talk a little bit of FAU, a guy who's just got on the beat, Luke Chaney, who's a up and coming guy. He works with the University of Miami, covering them as well, but he's covering FAU. We'll talk a little bit to him as well. And then we'll delve in, I think, the most important part of tonight. We're going to take a look back 50 years at Hollywood Hills Senior High School. They won the state championship in 1973. It was Broward County's first ever state championship, and they're having a reunion on Saturday where almost 45 members of that team will be coming back for their game on Saturday morning. So it's going to be a really good show. Hope you all listen in 6 to 8, 560 WQAM, kind of a lead into Zach and the Nose, which is another really good program. So, if you're since baseball starts tomorrow, let's get that last day of football in.
I love it. Larry Blustein does an awesome job. Thanks to Blue. Thanks to everyone for tuning in, the everydayers. We love you guys. Check out Locked On Canes Insiders. Click the link in the show description below, and we will talk to you again tomorrow. Double dose tomorrow. You got Locked On Canes and Locked On College Football Kickoff Live, part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.